Hi, I'm Roy Collin, and I'm the creator of the podcast. You can find everything about me and the 5 podcasts on bio.link/podcaster, and you'll find it in the QR code there. I'd also like to thank my sponsors. If you or someone you know is struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard Anxiety Solution Program Company offers a 6 weeks system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com, where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you have high blood pressure or want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. Get a $50 discount with my code ROY. Go to zona.com/discount/ROY, and you see the QR code for all my sponsors down at the end. Quality Polish manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metals. If you'd like a brochure, you see it in the QR code, and you just let us know if you would like a quotation shipped internationally and very competitive rates. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast.
Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube. And you'll find the links on my new QR code, which you can just see in the corner. And if you can't see it, if you're just listening, is bio.link/podcaster. I've got 4 other podcasts as well as being a coach. You find everything on them links. My guest today is actually from the USA. Speaker, author of a few books, of course, thought leader, and podcast guest, of course, but is also a podcaster. Please welcome Jeff Thon.
Hey, Roy, it is great to be here today. Thank you for having me on your program.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this. I mean, obviously, the fact that you're a podcaster, I see a cool mic, good professional lighting and sound, but you might let the listeners know a little bit about Jeff.
Yes, so I spent my career in information technology for 40 years. Roy, that sounds hard to it's very hard to say. It's very even harder to hear that I've been doing it for 40 years. But started my career writing software and moved into management and leadership roles. And about 4 years ago, launched my own company where I do advisory services for companies ranging anywhere from I host a podcast for one of my clients to I lead leadership retreats based on the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition from U.S. history. And we look at leadership lessons. So everything in between. And I know today we're going to be talking some about speaking and how that came to be. I've been doing that for probably 20 years now, I think, something like that, maybe a little bit longer than that. But that's kind of in a nutshell, that's me.
Okay. And I suppose before the speaking, you would have been planning on being on stage anyway, because you wanted to be a rock star, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, I did. You read my bio. That's great. Yeah, I all through junior high and high school and on into early adulthood, that's really all I ever wanted to do was be a rock star. But I learned a harsh reality very quickly after I graduated high school, is that you had to have talent, and I did not. So I needed something else, and I fell in love with computers. But ironically, I hated being in front of people, and that's part of the story about trying to figure out how to get up in front of audiences and speak. Was very intentional on my part as I progressed in my career. But yeah, that rock star, I still I love the way that you kicked off the recording with "Are you ready to rock and roll?" Because that's my line. Are you ready to rock and roll? Still love music.
So I suppose, like, you were shy or didn't, you made it intentional to be a public speaker. Tell us the journey.
Well, so I was rising through the ranks of management in the information technology area for a number of companies. And as I did that, I realized that one of the things that I aspired to do was to be a chief information officer, the head person over an IT department. And as I watched these people who were in those positions, they were comfortable in front of an audience, right? They might, whether it's presenting to the staff or presenting to the board or maybe presenting at a conference, they could do that. I would have ranked public speaking way down on my list of weaknesses because I just hated it. If I had to present at work the night before, my hands would be sweaty and I'd be tossing and turning at night instead of sleeping because I just could not see myself in front of an audience. And when I did do some speaking, really just at the team level, I'd freeze up and I'd stutter and hem and haw, say a lot of uhs and ohs and things like that, right? Because they're just starting out. But I realized that in order for me to become a chief information officer, I was going to have to figure out a way to get over that. Because, part of the role of being a leader, part of the role of being a CIO is to be able to communicate your vision to others and in such a way that they follow you. Well, if I couldn't get up in front of this group and describe my vision to them in a compelling way, I wasn't going to have very many followers. And I really couldn't have somebody else on my team do that, because then who are they following? They're following that person, not me. So I became very, very intentional. And I tell you, this sounds so cliche because speaking coaches will tell you this time and time again. Find something that you're passionate about, that you're interested in and you're knowledgeable in, and speak on that. So here I was, an information technology geek. And what I did was I fell in love with a story from history. I mentioned it a few minutes ago, the Lewis and Clark expedition and their travels across the U.S. continent back in the early 1800s. I just fell in love with that story. And at about that same time, my mother-in-law, I've got to give her credit, was the district governor for Rotary International, a civic organization that has clubs all over the world, but very heavily concentrated here in the U.S. So she had about 50 or 60 Rotary clubs that reported up to her. And, the interesting thing about Rotary clubs, Roy, is they're always looking for speakers. And you don't have to be very good because they don't pay you. They just give you a free lunch or a free breakfast. And so literally I spent almost a year and a half, 2 years going around to each one of these clubs and telling stories about the Lewis and Clark Trail and my wife and my adventures on the trail. And, the first time I did it, I had it all written out longhand and I had it in front of me and I'm reading it, right? And then, a few times after that, I'm reading off of note cards and it's just bullet points. And now I could go into those 2 or 3 speeches right now without having done them in 15 years, and I could do them by heart, right? Because you get more comfortable. And the fascinating thing to me was I still get nervous when I get up in front of a group, but I learned how to take that nervous energy and transform it into energy for the audience, for the listener, right? And so you kind of, like a rock star, you explode on stage and you bring energy, you bring passion, and that helps you connect with the audience. So that's the story of how I was able to do that early in my career. And now today I make my living from talking to audiences all over the country. So it's been a fun ride.
Brilliant. And like you mentioned, that all you'd get was a breakfast. I've done plenty of speeches that I didn't even get a breakfast. So I think that's a bonus. So
that's right. That's right.
You mentioned like in your career, and what I have seen, I know it held me back. I know I was way more competent than a lot of people. I was more dedicated, hardworking, but I hated public speaking. And I could see that the people that were getting the promotions were the ones that were competent. They knew what to say, but they could be 20% of what.
Yes.
Not just me, but I've seen that across the board. And I don't think you don't have to want to aspire to be a professional speaker. I think just in your business sense, you will benefit so much from it.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're able to articulate your ideas to a group and understand how to convey those messages. And, when I started down this path, I had no aspiration of being like a public speaker. I just wanted to be able to present to my team, the leadership of the organization that I worked for. And what gets really hard, and Roy, you and I have just met, but I would consider myself an introvert. And to stereotype information technology professionals, a lot of us are introverts. And so doing that is incredibly difficult for us. So one of the things I do now is I work with introverts on a one-on-one basis and talk about small things that they can do to start to be seen and be heard. It doesn't have to start with getting on a stage in front of 1,000 people. It can start with sitting around a table in a meeting of 10 people and being able to engage and take part in the meeting.
Brilliant. And I class myself as an amnivore. Like sometimes, I can be the life of the party. Another time, I like to sit back and just watch things and not engage. And I just it is what it is. Do I know before I go out what mood I'm going to be or how it's going to kick in? No, but I don't beat myself up for it. It is I see how I react to things.
Yeah, you go with the flow. And I would say that I have transitioned to that, over the years. I've kind of broken out of my shell just a wee bit. So,
there's people that listen to this that are they're always trying to improve being speakers, and there's others that are just afraid and they want to jump on. But the best thing is from your early, when you were beginning to when you went along, between technology, things that could go wrong, what tips could you give people that you wish somebody gave you, when you were beginning your journey?
Oh, nothing ever goes wrong, Roy. Come on.
So you might wonder what just happened there. As Jeff said, nothing really goes wrong. I just got a power cut and everything went off. So apologies for that, but it is what it is. Things do go wrong. You might let me know, Jeff, what else can go wrong?
Things do go wrong. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, because your image froze on the screen, and it was like, okay, I'm talking about going on when things go wrong. So
I hope it was a nice image, because sometimes you can look really bad. So
I laid down some great nuggets while we were disconnected. Now, seriously, one of the things that you learn, and I think this comes from experience of being on stage and realizing that things are going to go wrong, whether it's a power outage or there was a time I was in front of a group, and I like to move about the stage. I don't stand behind the podium, so I move when I speak. And I tripped over the stand of the projector. Didn't fall all the way to the ground, but tripped, right? And you just kind of laugh at yourself and you go on. And another time, I was in front of an audience of probably about 500 or so of technology professionals, and there was this elevated stage, so large stage, probably 2 or 3 feet off the ground. And there was a line in the talk that I give that it was like, bam, you could have hit me in the head with a 2x4. And I stepped back, and when I stepped back, I stepped completely off the stage in the back, caught myself on the curtains, pulled myself back up, and I just looked at the audience and the camera, and I said, I hope the cameras were rolling for that. And then I went right back in, because what you find, a lot of people a lot of speakers starting out get nervous that they're going to forget something. They're going to leave parts of their talk out. And what you soon learn is your audience doesn't know what you were going to say. So if you leave something out, it's okay. You just keep going. You tie your stories together, but over that experience, over that time, you learn how to deal with all kinds of things that could go wrong as a speaker. And so I think that's one of the lessons that really can only be learned through experience. You've got to experience something going wrong and have the fortitude just to keep rocking and rolling through your talk.
Brilliant. So with IT, I mean, how can you get a technical message to an audience that's not technical?
That's one of the things, and it's not just IT, right? It's any profession that is of technical of nature. You have to tell stories. You have to use metaphors and analogies that help them understand what you're trying to do. There was a time I was chief information officer for a commercial real estate development company. And one of the things that we were charged with was developing a technology strategic plan. So we spent months putting together these great technology plans. But when we were done, we had to go to the executive team and basically ask for money, right, to fund all these wonderful things that we wanted to do. But we needed to be able to explain what we were doing in terms that they would understand. And so I was lamenting this problem with one of the guys that worked for the company. He was a construction project manager, had nothing to do with IT. And I'm telling him about this challenge of how do I communicate all of this to all of them? And he said, well, you know, these guys make multi-million-dollar decisions almost every day. You know, build a technology park on the northwest side of Indianapolis. Yeah, we can do that. Build a casino in southern Indiana on dry land, but surround it by water. Yeah, we can do that. Build a tower in downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, that's 18 stories tall when the tallest building we've ever built is 4 stories. Yeah, we can do that. But they make all these decisions based on a set of documents that are in the same format. They call it an executive memo, and it's got different sections. It's got the executive summary, it's got benchmarks, it's got elevation drawings, it's got site plans, it's got all these things that go into it. So why not tell the story of the IT strategic plan in the format of an investment memo? So he and I sat down and wrote an investment memo using the same terminology. Instead of IT benchmarks, we had a section called rent comparables. That was the section they were used to seeing. It meant the same thing in their minds, right? When we talked about the site plan, we talked about our infrastructure and how do you connect infrastructure to the outside world, because a building is connected to the outside world through its power and water and sewer and everything else. So we just put it in those terms. And one of the greatest moments, I think, in my career was we got done presenting to this group, and our CEO kind of leans back in his chair, puts his hand behind his head, looks up at the ceiling and says, "That is the first time I've ever understood IT." It's like, yes. Because we used their terminology, right? We put it in something that would resonate with them. And, you know, rather than, I think sometimes as technologists, we try to teach our audience our language, and instead we should use their language to convey our ideas.
That is fantastic advice. And you would think that the majority of people would do that, but I would think not even 5% of people are capable of doing what you've just said.
Yeah. It is something you have to work on. And you know this from your career, Roy, storytelling is just so important. Being able to tell a story to underscore a point or to make a point in your talk is something that we all need to continue to hone and get better in our craft.
Excellent. So you're a fellow with the Institute of Digital Transformation, is it?
Yes.
So you might let me know what's that about.
Well, that is a group of people from around the world that are really focused on digital transformation, helping businesses come into the digital era, the digital age, right? We're leaving the industrial era behind. The new era is the digital era. And companies need to change. Yes, it's got some to do with their technology, but it's really changing their mindset, changing their approach, maybe even changing their revenue streams. So this is a group of experts from around the world that we get together once a month and we talk about concepts about this. We put out content that is useful to people who are going through this process or about to go through this process. And that content is written form, it's online. We do a series of LinkedIn Live events. We've written a book as the group of fellows from this organization. We wrote a book that came out earlier this year called Digital Transformation Demystified. And it was, each chapter was written by a different one of the fellows. So we all took a perspective on this concept, this thing called digital transformation, and helped to bring that to a wider audience.
Brilliant. So I suppose if we look at like technology with AI, because there's everybody, they're kind of copying stuff, plagiarism and everything. But I'd love to know your thoughts on the pros and cons of AI.
Wow, this is such an exciting time, right? AI, we've been talking about AI for years, but it's always been somewhere on the horizon, right? Well, this year when ChatGPT came out, it just exploded, right? It became available to everyone, even the free version. Anybody can log on and ask it questions. I think AI is going to fundamentally change the way we work and live. It's that next step in evolution of mankind. It's incredibly powerful, but I'm going to put some caveats on this as well. You have to be careful. The AI models that are out there right now, it's in the classification called generative AI. So basically what that means is these artificial intelligence models have been built on huge volumes of information, and they're able to correlate and collate that information and produce content. They're not creating anything new. They're taking what's already out there and kind of repackaging it. So you can ask it questions and it will give you answers. However, it sometimes makes up the answer. It infers from this data that it has, and it says, oh, well, this must be true. And it says it is fact, and it's not fact. So you have to be careful. And it goes back to that old adage of trust but verify. You got to verify everything it said. And just a minor example, I asked it a couple of months ago, I asked ChatGPT, what are the top 10 books about conducting a job search? And it listed the top 10 books, and they're all great books. And just on a joking manner, I said, but what about Amplify Your Job Search? And it says, oh, yes, Amplify Your Job Search. That is a great book written by Mary Jones, blah, 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 blah. Mary Jones didn't write that book. Jeff Tunn wrote that book. So it got that wrong, right? And so, but I corrected the model and I said, no, Jeffrey S. Tunn wrote that book. Oh, you're right. I apologize. I'll try to do better in the future. So it does learn from time to time. It can evolve, but you just have to verify. And the other caution that I'll put out there, Roy, and this is speaking on behalf of all the chief information officers and chief technology officers out there. You don't want to put confidential information into these models unless you have been instructed by your technology staff that it's okay to do so, because you don't want to take personal identifiable information or personal health information. You don't want to put that into these models and let the models consume that information, and because they'll regurgitate it for somebody else later. So you really have to be careful about how you're using it. I use it I use it every week in the podcast that I host. I use a tool called Cast Magic. And what Cast Magic does is it will ingest the audio from a podcast and it will produce marketing collateral. So pull quotes, blog posts, things like that. Saves a ton of work. Now it's not ready for prime time. You have to go in and edit and make it more readable, make sure that the messages are the messages that you want to promote, but it saves a bunch of time. So I'm all in on AI with cautions.
Exactly. It's like a Google search. Some people regurgitate what they see, and it depends on the question you're asking. So you just have to be very careful. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're going to get a whole new set of coursework in our high schools and our colleges of how to interact and how to prompt these AI engines to give the best response, because it's a little more art than science right now.
Yeah. Perfect. So you mentioned the podcasting, and I see is it 271 episodes that you've done with Status Quo.
Yeah, we're getting up there. Yeah,
fair dose. Yeah, that's very good. So do you have it hosted on your own system, because just by doing the research, or
no. So Status Go is the name of the podcast. It's for technology professionals who want to break out of the status quo. It is produced by a client of mine, Intervision Systems. They're a managed service provider out of California here in the States. And so they host on their website, but we also use a platform called Blueberry, which is the streaming service that we use. And so we load all of our episodes out to Blueberry, and then using the RSS feed, Blueberry sends that out to Apple and Google and Spotify and all the major platforms.
Brilliant. And I mean, like, I've done a lot with the 5 podcasts that I've got, but I mean, 271 is fantastic. So just like to know what you've kind of learned to make you a better podcaster over the years.
Well, it's kind of like we were talking earlier about speaking. The more often that you do it, the more comfortable you get, right? Again, when I first started out, I had my script, and this is what I was going to say, and these were the questions I was going to ask, and all that. And now I don't need all that. Sometimes I offer it to the guest to make the guest feel comfortable. But I'd say the biggest lesson that I try to adhere to on our show is every episode tells a story. I'm having a guest on the podcast. I'm interviewing a gentleman this afternoon. His name is Jake Miller. And we're actually talking about AI this afternoon, which will be interesting. But as I think about that episode, it's what story do I want to tell our listeners with Jake being the voice, right? And so how do I, as host, draw that story out of him? And so we wrap kind of a story around it. And then the other piece that we always like to do is end with a very clear call to action. We want to be an action-based podcast. So it's like, what are 1 or 2 things that our listeners should do tomorrow because they listened to us today? It's always the way I wrap it up with our guests. But I tell you, and I know you have experienced this as well, Roy, it is probably the most fun that you can have in your career, hosting a podcast, because you get to talk to so many incredible people. I've talked to people all over the world that I've never been able to talk to if I wasn't hosting them on a podcast, in a wide variety of subjects. I get to learn from them, and I have a front row seat. It's just so fun.
Yeah, I love it. It's something that, you don't know when you say, like, I'm 5 years doing it now, and I don't think I'll ever throw in the towel, to be honest. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep going.
Yeah, brilliant. So I know you're a board advisor to Forbes Tech Council, Indie CIO Network, and Connect World Mag. So you might let us know, 1, what advantages it is for you being a board member, and 2, what you kind of bring to the table, or what somebody that's going to try to get into that kind of position.
Wow. So what I think I get a couple of things out of it, and it probably varies based on those organizations that you mentioned, Roy. But for the most part, I see it as a way to give back. I've been very blessed in my career. I've learned from a wide variety of incredible professionals, both in technology and outside of technology. And so serving on these boards is a way to help those organizations, help their members, help their followers. So I get that it feeds that altruistic side of my personality that I'm helping them. I'd say the other piece that I get out of it is, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by so many amazing people that I get to listen to and learn from around the table. When we're in our specific careers, we sometimes get blinders on, and we're not looking outside our own industry. But if you sit on a board, you're talking to people who may be they may be in finance, they may be in healthcare, they may be in retail, and so you're learning from these different industries. What I bring to the table, or what I try to bring to the table for these organizations, is listening to and understanding the problems that the organizations are facing, and always with technology in the back of my mind. I'm a 40-year technology professional. Trust me, I'm older than 40. But I've got a wide background, a deep background in technology. So if I'm listening to a problem that an organization is having, Hoosier Environmental Council or Mud Creek Conservancy, is there a way that I can help solve that with a technology suggestion? So I'm always filtering what we're talking about through that lens, and able to provide insights based on my background that, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? You know, you mentioned AI a little bit ago. All these organizations are struggling with how to use AI. I can bring some of my experience to bear on those questions as we debate around the boardroom.
Brilliant. So, I mean, you're an author. We can't go without talking about your books. Amplify Your Job Search and Amplify Your Value. And there's a few other things as well, but you also have the workbooks. You might just kind of talk about what you're covering in them and why you kind of created them.
Yes. So my first book, Amplify Your Value, Leading IT with Strategic Vision. I wrote that, it popped up on my memories on Facebook this week, that 5 years ago was the launch of that book. So it's been out for 5 years. But it's really a framework for an IT leader to follow to make sure that their technology strategy is tied to the business strategy, and they feed on each other. And then how do you develop strategies and tactics to make sure that vision comes to life? So it's a bit of a roadmap, and it's told in story form from a lot of experiences that I've had in my career and that others have had, and I bring them together in that book. The second book that I wrote a couple years ago, Amplify Your Job Search, Strategies for Finding Your Dream Job. I wrote that in the height of the pandemic. So many people were losing their jobs, and we don't teach enough about how to conduct a job search. It's, you put out a resume and you blast it to 500 companies, and you hope. It's called the spray and pray method. Yeah, spray and pray. But what I have learned over my career through my own job searches, through coaching and mentoring with others who were going through a job search, is this process of here's how I think you should conduct your job search. And so I put that out at the beginning of the pandemic. It has a journal with it, as well as a workbook that you can work through to help you on your job transition. I'll say to your listeners, Roy, if anybody is in a job transition and they'd like a copy, just hit me up, because I'm happy to share a copy. And then I always like to joke and say I've got 2.5 books out, because I published a book last year that was actually a second edition of a book my mother wrote 40 years ago. She wrote a book called The Flame Shall Not Consume You, and she was almost killed in a fire. And the book is a story about the fire, its aftermath, and her wrestling match with herself and with her God to how do you recover from this? She was a mid-40s, beautiful woman, and burned from the top of the head to the middle of the thighs, so completely destroyed her looks. So as I started to publish books, I start to hear from people from around the world asking, "Hey, are you related to Mary Ellen Tunn?" It's like, yeah, that was my mom. And they want a copy of the book. So I put it out on ebook and on audiobook. And lo and behold, my mom became a best-selling author on Amazon.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So yeah, I love writing. I'm working on a couple of new books that'll probably come out next year. And I'm just at the beginning stages. I've got the outline and I'm ready to dive in and start writing. So
brilliant. And I mean, just on the two that you mentioned there, I went into some beautiful comments and 5-star ratings, so it's highly rated in Amazon. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just finally, I love to ask people about the social media, especially like with kind of, because you've got a few hats on. I mean, I know like with the podcasting as well. Like what do you think serves you best?
I love LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a professional networking platform, is fabulous. I've been a big proponent of it now for, gosh, going back to 2008, 2009, probably somewhere around in there. I just think it's a great way to not only build a professional network, but maintain it. It gives you a tool to maintain it and learn from so many amazing people. I know I've said that multiple times today. I love learning from people. So, I'm now following you, Roy. So I'm going to watch what you post, and I'm going to learn from your wisdom and your experience, and just encourage people to connect on LinkedIn, because I think it's fabulous. I also use Instagram a little bit. I find that's really good for the podcast. So I post some videos and some teasers out on Instagram, and that seems to do pretty well. And then for the grandkids, I use Facebook, because it's morphed into a grandparent platform, I think. But we post pictures of the grandkids and we follow them and all that. I do some professional stuff on Facebook, but it's mostly on LinkedIn.
Listen, Jeff, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So you might let the listeners know how they can get in contact with you.
The best way to reach me is connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm really easy to find. There's not a lot of Jeff Tunns out there, so you'll find me pretty quickly. My website is www.jeffreystunn.com. I was real original when I came up with the URL for my company. Just used my name. So you can find me there. Would love to hear from you. Would love to connect. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's anybody in a job transition out there that would like a copy of Amplify Your Job Search, I am happy to drop one in the mail to you.
That's brilliant. Yeah, appreciate that. So what I'll do is make sure I put all of the links both on the audio and the video. Thank you very much, Jeff.
My pleasure.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. As mentioned, we're on BitChute and YouTube and Rumble as well. Now I started to use Rumble as well. So if you're into Rumble, you'll find me on that. And I've got my 4 other podcasts along with my coaching on bio.link/podcaster, or just screenshot that and you get everything there. So make sure you give us a 5-star rating and a thumbs up, and make sure you check out Jeff's podcast and do the exact same for him. And when you get his book, give him a 5-star rating and a nice comment. It really helps. Until next week, take care.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. You'll find everything about me on bio.link/podcaster with all my podcasts, and you'll find it you see in the QR code in the graphic that's shown. I'd like again to thank my sponsors. So if you or someone you know struggling with anxiety and want to know how to be 100% anxiety free in 6 weeks without therapy or drugs, Daniel Packard's Anxiety Solution Program company offers a 6-week system that permanently solves anxiety at an astounding 90% success rate. People who join the program only pay at the end once they have clear, measurable results. If you're interested in learning more, go to permanentanxietysolutions.com, where you can book a free consultation with Daniel. Do you fight blood pressure and or want to get off the meds? Doctors are amazed at what Zona Plus can do. You can get a $50 discount with my code ROY, zona.com/discount/ROY. And you'll see it in the QR code as well as Daniel's QR code. Quality manufacturer of metal products for telecommunication and workshop equipment and other metal materials. You see the brochure there in the QR code, and let me know if you would like a quotation, shipped internationally at very competitive price. I'd like to thank all my sponsors and also all my listeners. Be sure to give me a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, really helps. And I also have a video on how to give a 5-star rating because a lot of people have wrote to me asking me that they don't know how to do that. Until next week, take care.